Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett here with episode number 303 of Season 2. My God, Season 2 of Robservations, the show about something coming to you Imagination Connoisseurs, you members of this the Post-Geek Singularity community. And as you all know, these shows are brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And if you go to their website at getluckytiger.com and you punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity, you get 20% off of your order. Now, you're probably all wondering, why am I wearing Russell Wilson's Seahawks jersey today? Why am I dressing up as one of the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest? Well, it's a big game today, son. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow connoisseurs, gentle beings, kind people from all over the universe. It is the last game of the regular season, and we are playing the San Francisco 49ers once again. It is going to be a battle royale, but why is this an even more special day? Because there's been so many injuries on the Seahawks that we went back and got Marshawn Lynch. Brought him out of retirement. He hasn't played for 14 months. That's right. Beast Mode is back today, and he will be playing. I don't know how that's going to go, but Uncle Pete, full of surprises that one. Uncle Pete brought back Marshawn Lynch, one of the former cornerstones of the Seahawks, took us to a Super Bowl victory. He is back, ladies and gentlemen. And I always say that the world is full of wonder. There's all kinds of goodness going on. Well, look no further than the Seahawks today. Now, I don't know how they're going to do against the 49ers. They squeaked it out. They squeaked that victory out a little earlier in the season. Unbelievable game. One of the greatest games I've ever seen in my life. And who knows? Let's hope Russell Wilson, my man Russell Wilson, will bring it home and we will win our division. It's for the division title, ladies and gentlemen. It's that kind of a game. Anyway, I thought I had to wear this is official NFL football. I shaved again. I'm ready. I'm hoping they're going to do what I want them to do, and that is bring home a victory, ladies and gentlemen. Bring home a victory. Now, I came across something back from October 2nd. October 2nd of 2019, and it was very interesting. It's a State of Fandom report. Insights for marketers seeking to tap into the age of fandom. Fan First Global Entertainment Platform report finds the average duration of a long-term fandom is 9 years. And that engaging younger fans across genres and content verticals can be critical to success. So I stumbled across this and I'm like, I'm going to read this on the show. Let's see what they say about us as fans. The average duration of long-term fandom is 9 years. I'm curious as to who they're polling, but let's read this, shall we? San Francisco, October 2nd, 2019. Fandom, the Fan First Global Entertainment Platform, released its inaugural Insights report in New York City at Fan DNA, Marketing in the Age of Fandomonium. The study, how did I not know about this? How was I not a keynote speaker? Fandom, I know I don't work for you, but give me a break. The study, titled The State of Fandom, identifies the stages and drivers of fandom and provides critical insights for marketing and media leaders aiming to increase and sustain fan engagement. Fandom's platform has more than 200 million monthly users and more than 400,000 communities across movies, TV, and gaming, granting it a unique ability to analyze and understand what motivates fans. The market for content is booming as U.S. adults spend 11.5 hours per day connected to media. This is a Nielsen first quarter 2019 Nielsen Total Audience Report. but the content they're consuming isn't strictly new. Nearly half of new video game releases are part of existing franchises, according to Game Informer, and 1 in 3 new film releases are based on existing properties, according to Box Office Mojo. With increased competition for fan attention, media companies are relying on franchises to take existing fans on a longer journey, and to bring in new fans by framing releases as part of a larger cultural conversation. Fandom's report finds that marketers seeking to build lifelong fandoms must learn to embrace and engage fans at every step along the path, from discovery, oh, I hope not, finding out about the content, to emotional investment, becoming engaged with the content, and evangelism, spreading the word about the content. The report highlights how marketers must also understand how to interact with distinct audience segments in the context of these different stages of fandom, as well as the top motivations for consuming content in 3 main verticals: TV, movies, and video games. Here are a few insights of the report. Over a person's lifetime, the arc of fandom is long. I guess it is. The average duration of long-term fandom is 9 years. Engaging younger fans can be critical to content success. Across genres and content verticals, fandom peaks in teens, takes a dip among 18 to 24-year-olds, and reignites like a lightsaber. That wasn't in there. I just said like a lightsaber. In 25 to 34-year-olds. 3 fan segments: explorers, evangelists, and devoted enthusiasts, comprise 75% of the fan market and account for 91% of fan spend devoted to their favorite fandoms in the past year. These segments are more likely to subscribe to a service in order to access their favorite content. The Fan Health Index, a proprietary metric that tracks the proportion of superfans to casual fans, is currently 128, showing that deeply engaged TV, movie, and video game fans significantly outnumber more casual fans. You think? Word of mouth reigns supreme for content discovery, regardless of age, gender, or content vertical. Among TV and movie fans, ads also play an important role, serving as the #1 driver of new content discovery. At Fandom, we have a front row seat to the evolving role fans are playing in all facets of pop culture, from movies to games, TV, books, anime, and more, said Perkins Miller, CEO of Fandom. We are confident that this report will help marketers identify trends across the industry and set actionable benchmarks for engaging successfully with their fans. The State of Fandom report is produced by the Fandom Insights Lab, which provides industry thought leadership and exclusive fan insights to fandom's most valued media partners. The study was conducted in partnership with market research company Ipsos. Ipsos conducted 20-minute online surveys with 5,000 TV, movie, and video game fans in the U.S., ages 16 to 44, fielded from August 16th to 23rd, 2019. Fandom segmentation also leverages the results of previous surveys conducted by Ipsos among 10,000 fans in the U.S. within the past year. And you can download the full report. And I'm going to put that link in the live chat, so you have the opportunity to do that. And I really do enjoy sending you these kinds of things. Or maybe not. One never knows. Let's see. And why am I having such a hard time doing this? Well, here you go, everybody. Here's the 2019 State of Fandom report, in case you didn't know what it means to be a fan. Now, I've always found the desire to, I guess, understand and monetize fandom strange to me, because I guess I've always thought that, You know how you become a fan of something? If it's cool and good. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're somebody with a predilection to be drawn toward, well, predilection for science fiction, fantasy, horror, or whatever, you're an imagination connoisseur. Do you can you be reduced to the sum of your parts? Is your fandom something that is easily quantifiable? I don't really know. I mean, I remember back in the 90s when Image Comics exploded across the world. Now, for those of you who don't know, Image Comics was founded by a group of rogue comic book artists that had achieved rock star status in the 90s. Todd McFarlane, who on Spawn, Rob Liefeld, who started on New Mutants, began at DC doing things like Hawk and Dove, Jim Lee, who's Jim Lee's X-Men, Whilce Portacio. I don't know if he was one of the founding members, but they basically, and a few others, they basically found Jim Valentino. They founded Image Comics, and they all left Marvel at the height of their popularity. And when they founded Image Comics, they were creators who completely controlled their fate and their destiny. And Image Comics, when it's at its inception, was massively successful. There was a lot of money being generated. I mean, they were selling millions of copies of comics every month, and they were raking in millions of dollars. Rob Liefeld, even, who created Deadpool created Rob Liefeld. He created Deadpool, and he also created Cable in the pages of New Mutants, the latter half of the first volume's run. I think in the last 10 issues, I think between issues 90 and maybe it was 89, I don't remember, but the last 10 issues, the last 12 issues, Rob Liefeld created both Cable and Deadpool. Rob Liefeld had a Levi's commercial that he starred in. I mean, it was craziness. But what was really interesting is I remember at Comic-Con 94, Image had a huge presence. I mean, all these guys were like the Beatles of comic books. I mean, it was huge. They were hugely famous. I mean, it was amazing. But in the wake of that, other companies, interested parties, money people, essentially, wanted to recreate the success of what Image was doing. So there were companies that started like Broadway Comics. Leonard Nimoy was doing comics. Jim Shooter, who used to run Marvel, he had a new comics company and did books like Plasm. There was just a lot of money thrown at the comic book marketplace because the idea was that it was the comic books, it was the medium that was just ripe to make money. And even back then, I was looking at this in 95, 96, when you saw these companies sprouting up. They all collapsed, by the way. They went nowhere. Because ultimately, you cannot just make money if you make a comic book. You have to make a good comic book that's really cool, that also has the right talent. So it wasn't just comic books. And I've seen this happen over and over again in the fan space, where everybody is trying to quantify what is it about fandom that makes so much money? How can we carve out our little slice of the pie? And it's funny, like, I don't watch things because they're science fiction. I'm more prone to notice that something exists because it's science fiction, but I'm not just going to watch anything that's set in space. I know better. Some of you would say, oh, well, what about that Caroline Munro Star Crash action figure? You watch Star Crash. I know. I understand. But if you're trying to quantify it, I don't just watch as a fan anything to do with space, or as a horror movie fan. Just because you say something is a horror movie, I'm not going to just watch it. I'm not going to watch everything. Why would I do that? Every fan is discerning. They're very discerning. As a matter of fact, I would say most fans are more discerning than your average person, according to this report, as I just read. It's what they would call less casual fans, which I think most fans, I don't know many casual fans. I think everybody, say Star Wars, for instance, everybody likes Star Wars, but the people that really like Star Wars, as evidenced by the internet, they really are into it. I mean, my mom likes Star Wars. I guess you could call my mom a casual fan. But I mean, my mother would not get up and watch a Wired video with Doug Chang this morning that goes through all of the different starfighters in all of the live action Star Wars movies as Elizabeth and I did this morning. I don't know if Elizabeth even would have picked it to watch. But to be fair, Elizabeth sat through the whole thing. Cheers to you, honey. By the way, once again, yes, I'm drinking just water. But anyway, it's always funny. I understand there's now a company called FANDOM. They're probably making a lot of money servicing many different platforms. And I do think FANDOM was involved in making the Galaxy Quest documentary. If I'm right about that, I think it was. And that's really very cool. I thought that was an incredibly, I haven't seen the documentary yet, but what an incredibly cool thing to do. I mean, what's really interesting for me is that as a DVD content producer, so much of that work has gone away, at least at my level, the level I was working at and the level I was being paid at, and because the studios aren't really doing that anymore. But fans have sort of filled that void. There's a great Psycho documentary. There's a great Nightmare on Elm Street documentary. There's a great American Werewolf in London documentary that were all fan made, and they're great. One of my favorite DVD content producers now is Daniel Griffiths, whose company Ballyhoo Films is doing a lot of work for Shout, and his work showed up on Studio Canal's John Carpenter discs. So, and he's getting paid, but the fan community has always been pretty hardcore, and I think, as we all know, the fan community is very discerning. Just because something is a comic book or something is a science fiction movie or whatever, it has to be good. So first and foremost, the things that become popular are quality. Before even thinking about genre, and obviously there are genre fans, the people that are heavily into these things are already fans of this material for whatever reason. You become, I don't know why I got attracted to Star Trek and Star Wars and the Twilight Zone. That's why I say imagination connoisseur. That's, by the way, my own term. I made that up because I think it has more to do with the human imagination than anything else. Like my mother, I've explained on the show, is very practically minded. She's not an imaginative person. It's not in her nature. She's very much about the here and now and what's in front of you. However, she recognized that I was an imagination connoisseur, and she encouraged that part of my life, which I'm forever grateful for. And it was interesting. Like, she knew I loved Star Trek and made sure I had Star Trek books and models. And when I liked Justice League of America comics, my mom would find them for me. She would actually go to a spindle rack and get me a Justice League of America comic. Because, I couldn't drive. We're talking when I was like 7, 8, 9. My mom was very on top of my fandom and definitely nurtured it. But she never asked to sit down and watch a Star Trek episode with me. Not once. My dad did. But she would get me the books, and she was completely aware of what I wanted in terms of my fandom and what I needed and what I was excited about. And she also, as I got older, she did make it a point. She always wanted to go see whatever the big movies were that came out, like whether it was Star Wars or Star Trek the Motion Picture. My mom was adamant. She wouldn't watch a Star Trek episode with me at home, but she was very adamant that the family had to go see Star Trek the Motion Picture with me. So we did. How cool is that? My mom was amazing that way. And I'm forever grateful to have a mother that, while maybe not a fan herself, maybe not interested in understanding what about this stuff attracted me, all she cared about was she knew that I was really into it, and she nurtured that within me. And I'm, again, forever grateful for that. But it's always funny to me when people want to quantify what fans are. Like in this report, and I haven't read the whole report, I just told you to download it. I just read the article. I don't know if it addresses what fans are really looking for is the quality of the content. And how is that quantifiable? It's interesting to me. I'm always arguing with John Campea on the John Campea show about how all film is subjective. And I'm always saying to him, it isn't subjective. You know, there is a quantifiable, objective quality to the things that we love. And just because somebody doesn't like if I can understand somebody doesn't like The Godfather, it's not their thing. Or somebody doesn't like pick your whatever favorite classic movie. There's going to be a lot of people that don't. But that doesn't mean that objectively The Godfather isn't a great film. I think that we just haven't figured out ways or mechanisms to measure what makes The Godfather great. And also, to be fair, people do have to be, you have to be predisposed to, you have to have a certain skill set of your own to recognize whether something is great or not, or interest. You know, I don't think my mom would be particularly a good judge of whether or not a movie is great or not, but she does know what she likes. I will say this. I've told the story before. When I took my mom to see Avatar, she was completely blown away by it. She was amazed. I mean, her eyes were like as big as saucers when the movie was over, and she turned and looked at me. It was the first time she ever saw IMAX 3D. We were in Palm Springs at my grandfather's house, and we went and saw the movie. And, you know, she turned and looked at me she was like, how did they do that? You know, and it's very interesting when, you know, what am I a fan of? If you looked in around this room, what am I? What does all of this mean? Am I a fan of one particular thing? I've never met anyone that is a fan, a genre fan at Comic-Con or a science fiction convention that's only interested in one thing. I honestly, I never have. I've never met somebody that's only interested in one thing. People look at me. I'm sure there are those that are shocked that I'm wearing a Seahawks jersey today. Like, oh my God, Rob, are you selling out? Well, no, but you know, I came to like football sort of later in life, like Hyman Roth in Godfather 2. You know, as he got older, he tended to like football more. But there's so many different things that fans like, and I think when it comes right down to it, what we want more than anything else is to be engaged by great content, whether it's video games. And first of all, pretty much everybody agrees. Fans, for the most part, sure, there's people that might not. There's always people that don't go with the flow. But for the most part, fans are pretty much in agreement with what's good and what's bad. It's readily apparent. Something of quality always rises to the top. It always, as this report says, it always finds its audience nowadays, especially with word of mouth being the most important thing. And I totally agree with that. The important thing, though, to me is whether you're going to try and figure out how to quantify fandom and monetize it somehow. At the end of the day, the most important thing, and in this article, it didn't say that, maybe it does in the report. The most important thing about fandom is that fans get great quality content in whatever medium, whether it's movies, television, video games, comic books, model kits, action figures, whatever it is that fans are attracted to, it just has to be good. And that's what's the most important thing, is that we want quality content that enriches not just our lives, but as we, as Imagination Connoisseurs, know, we are connoisseurs first and foremost. And I just think when I read these articles about it's the state of fandom, the state of fandom is the same as it's always been. There are certain kinds of people that like certain kinds of things, and what they like ultimately is stuff that's great, that's well done, that has authorship and is made by creators that really have something to say and know how to say it. You know, I was reading David Fincher is finally making a new movie called Mank, based on Herman Mankiewicz, who the screenwriter who wrote Citizen Kane with Orson Welles. And his father actually wrote the screenplay, and this is David Fincher's new movie. David Fincher is one of my favorite filmmakers as far as being part of the new breed of filmmakers that came after the grandmasters like Kurosawa, Scorsese, Spielberg, Coppola, all these guys. David Fincher is one of our great filmmakers. And people were saying, oh, I was reading in a chat board yesterday, oh, who cares about this? It'll be boring. And I'm like, if David Fincher is interested in making something, that's enough for me. And it's funny how fandom now it sometimes is so immediately dismissive. It's like right now, people make fun of Avatar, like, betting against James Cameron. I know fandom can be a fickle group of people, but you know what? At the end of the day, fans just want great things, well made, well told, with real authorship behind them. And I think that somebody should pay me to consult for fandom because I want to be a part of this study. They should ask me. Come on, give me a call. I'm cheap. I'll work cheap. But anyway, that's what I want to talk about today. That was just something that struck me as interesting. And I thought I would pass it along. Now, since yesterday, I've noticed, I wanted to mention, I figured why not? Derek Nichols subscribed to the channel. Mantra for LA subscribed to the channel. Dilbert627 subscribed to the channel. Xling Boxer 11385 subscribed to the channel. Cole Richards subscribed to the channel. This is the Way subscribed to this channel. Ryan Potter subscribed to the channel. Dwayne Woodley subscribed to the channel. Kermit Williams subscribed to the channel. Fernando Aries subscribed to the channel. I want to thank all you guys for subscribing. And if I can remember, or if you can remember, to hit like or subscribe if you don't already, that would be great for this channel. It's always helpful for the analytics. Now, as many people know, I did promise I was going to read a Willow Yang letter yesterday. I didn't because Willow lit off to Rise of Skywalker. So I didn't read her letter about Man of Steel, but I'm going to today. Willow tipped me today. She writes, Rise of Skywalker spoilers. I watched the movie with two friends during the Reylo scene where, I can't read that, but I'll say it anyway, where Kylo dies. One of them exclaimed, "What?" out loud. After the movie, they asked me what just happened, and I was like, I'm not really sure how stuff works here. Willow continues. She tipped again. They still enjoyed the movie, though. Their assessment was that the story wasn't very good, and there wasn't much character development, but it was still entertaining, and they laughed several times, mostly in scenes involving C-3PO. I thought C-3PO was great in the movie, to be honest. I really did. Thought C-3PO was great. Brian Morris subscribed. Jason S. tipped me. Jason S. says, I know you've talked a lot about Analog Toys, which is a YouTube channel that deals with older action figures. One of my favorite channels on that is called Retro Blasting. Everyone who is into older action figures should check them out. Yes, Jason, first of all, thanks for tipping. Same with you, Willow. Yeah, I do talk a lot about, I love other YouTube channels and Retro Blasting and Analog Toys. I don't know any of the people that make these channels. I just watch their content, and I think both Retro Blasting and Analog Toys is really great. And Analog Toys, I think, is a guy out of Australia. And as I've said before on Analog Toys' channel, he has a great collection of toys, mostly from the 70s. And when I say great collection, it's very curated. All of his pieces are they're like the creme de la creme of the pieces of that are available. I just love what he's done. I look at his stuff and I'm like, yeah, this guy, he really knows what he's talking about. And his own collection completely reflects that. I mean, he's gone after the very choice pieces. And I just appreciate, again, authorship, curation. He's an imagination connoisseur of the first order, and he really knows what he's talking about. And obviously they do too on Retro Blasting, which is a great thing. But Jason, thank you for tipping. He also says, Jason also tipped again. He says, versions of movies are permanently lost. I've noticed many times that the movie I watch on the DVD Blu-ray has used alternate takes, or there are lines missing from what I saw in the theater. Most notable are with comedies. How often does it happen? Well, Jason, sometimes they might go do that. It doesn't happen very often. But remember, I think sometimes you might be mistaking things. There's a lot of things in trailers that don't wind up in the finished film, not so much in the movies themselves, because making edits on finished films is very difficult and expensive. So, but that does happen. But it doesn't happen that much. Justin Smith subscribed. Fahad Dotsi subscribed. Pete Cat subscribed. Thank you for that. Johnny Long sent me a tip. Johnny Long says, Rob, I can't tell you how great I thought the season finale of The Mandalorian was. The whole episode was wildly entertaining. I love the Scout Troopers cameo in the beginning. My dad and I were rolling. Seeing the dark saber brought to live-action Star Wars is something, Johnny tipped again, that I thought I would never see. Moments like this can only be truly appreciated by Imagination Connoisseurs. That's why you and this show are the best. Can't thank you enough for the space that you've created for like-minded individuals. Well, Johnny Long, first of all, thanks for tipping. I very much appreciate that. Bruh, that dark saber. I mean, for anybody that watches the Clone Wars or the Rebels, that dark saber was definitely something people were like, huh. What I really loved about The Mandalorian, I think ultimately overall, I really did enjoy it. I thought, like you said, the last episode was great. It's like they just took everything we love about Star Wars that had nothing to do with the Skywalker saga, but had everything to do with the overall universe, and put it in the show. And I think that's really cool. The biker scouts, of course, anybody who's ever seen Kevin Rubio's Troops probably recognized a little bit with the biker scouts and how they couldn't hit anything. And I loved all that. It was a lot of fun. And I completely agree with you. I thought it stuck the landing, and I really appreciate it when people say that we have a community here that is very much a place people want to hang out in, because that was always my desire from the beginning. And remember, as we increase this channel, when we get to 20,000 subscribers, I'm almost up to 17,000. I will reveal the Hot Toys wall. 20,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go, because everyone's always asking about my Hot Toys. I mean, there are other people, like, if you go watch Justin's collection, I mean, he has a bigger collection than I do, but I have some older pieces, but I do think that there are other places in the world that have better Hot Toys collections, but I think it'll be fun to have it as part of this, incredible. There's just a lot of diversity of stuff in here, so I'm looking forward to showing more. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. More people subscribe. Oh, Mark C. sent in a super chat. Mark C. says, The Power of Grayskull is a crowd-funded documentary about the Masters of the Universe. It's so good it made it to Netflix and is a special feature on the He-Man Complete Series set. Yeah, I mean, I think the Galaxy Quest documentary as well. There's no reason why people shouldn't start branching out and making documentaries. The only problem when fans are out there making documentaries is using obviously copywritten material and you're monetizing it. With documentaries, there's a lot of things like fair use that come into play, which is always a helpful thing. But yeah, these documentaries, I think fans are going out. A lot of YouTubers are learning filmmaking techniques. I mean, one of the interesting things about YouTube is there's a lot of budding filmmakers out there that they're not just like me talking into a camera, but they're making very sophisticated content using editorial, using mixing, using all kinds of drones, all kinds of things. So it makes sense that, Francis Coppola always talked about home entertainment, home video, and all the technology would be, it would allow, like, I don't know where he actually said it, but the sentiment was that some 10-year-old girl in, say, Oklahoma using a consumer video camera would make the next Citizen Kane or something along those lines. I don't know if that's going to ever happen, but what is very cool is seeing everybody out there who's learning this technology and making things and sharing it, because it's not expensive anymore, and everybody's carrying around very sophisticated filmmaking equipment with them, even on their phones, which is really amazing. Timbula the Spider Monkey, Tim is here. He sent in a tip. I think the age of the mega fan is over. Sure, they're still out there, but nowadays, things that used to be looked down upon as nothing but silly, childish entertainment seem to be much more catered to a wide audience and, further to the point, accepted. Look, I agree. I was lucky when I was growing up. I was only ever ridiculed really once. It was so stupid about my interests. Brad Koval called me a Star Wars freako, in junior high school, and everyone laughed at him when he said it. So I never went through the whole nerd phase. I mean, I was always a very social kid with girlfriends, and I played sports and skied, and I was very, I mean, I liked people, and I was more closeted about my interests, not because I was ashamed of them, but just because no one else was really that interested. But there was no reason for me to be ashamed. I was never really made to feel shame. But yeah, I think now all of this stuff, the world went, we live in our sci-fi world now. I mean, once people started growing up with things like Star Wars and video games became more sophisticated, and things like Japanese animation, we got more anime on this side of the pond. I mean, that's what brought so many female fans into it. Between gaming and anime, you saw a whole influx in the 90s especially of female fans. And as I've said before, when you go to Comic-Con, it's almost just as many guys as girls there. And I think what's interesting is I do think female fandom is slightly different than male fandom, as men are slightly different than women, you know, or whatever gender you identify with. I think a lot of who you are has something to do with how you approach fandom. But at the end of the day, we're all fans. We all like the same kind of things. We might like them in different ways, and I think it's great. But at the end of the day, fans are all the same in that what they're looking for is quality entertainment that move them and transport them someplace that they don't get in their daily lives. And that's, I think, the whole point of being an imagination connoisseur is you can have sometimes a much richer life, richer imaginative life. The point, or I guess the trick is being able to tether yourself to reality and not lose yourself in your imagination. Griffin Campbell says, how do you feel about the Phantom Menace? Ooh. Well, it's funny, you know, okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Phantom Menace is a collection of YouTubers that are, I guess what they have in common is they're very critical. They have critical voices out there, and a lot of them have been branded toxic or misogynistic based on the way they approach their love of fandom. I sort of see it differently. I think for the most part, most of the Phantom Menace channels, at least that I follow, and you know, I do like Midnight's Edge, and I do watch Gary Beekler at Nerdrotic, and I haven't watched a lot of Ethan Van Sciver, and you know, I appeared on Geeks and Gamers this year with Jeremy, which, by the way, some people, it was very interesting. When I went on Jeremy's show, I got a lot of emails saying, good job, that was really cool, I really liked that show, when are you going to go on again? And then I got a lot of people saying, how can you support Jeremy? And what was interesting about that is, as my answer to that is, look, ultimately we're all fans. And while Jeremy and I might disagree on a lot of things, at the end of the day, we're still fans of all of this material. And I think the Phantom Menace, again, ultimately, they are calling for, they just want to see quality in what they're fans of. Now, I have to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to Andre, sort of the grand poobah over at Midnight's Edge. Midnight's Edge just dropped a video about Dune. And Andre did the video himself, and he's Norwegian. He lives in Norway. And his video was nothing but positivity about the upcoming Dune movie. And I was like, I watched this morning, and it was positive all the way around. They had their sources that they've heard from that the production's going well. They had nothing bad to say at all. And it's clear that Andre and Midnight's Edge is on the Dune bandwagon, as I am. And his video left a smile on my face. And I'm like, I think what's really interesting is I think fandom as a whole, look, Rise of Skywalker has come out. It is not the unmitigated disaster that a lot of people thought it was going to be. It's very hit and miss. It's all over the place. It's a mess. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I liked it more than I expected to. And while it's not perfect, it certainly is. It's not the Man with the Golden Gun of the Star Wars franchise or The View to a Kill of the Star Wars franchise, the way those two Bond films are not so great. So I think that what I would like to see about the Phantom Menace is, now that the Skywalker saga is over, we're not going to be getting another Star Wars movie until 2022. People seem to really like how The Mandalorian wound up. I mean, the next thing that we have coming down the pike, and I'm not going to lie, is Picard. And I've got my hackles up. I've definitely got my knives sharpened, and I'm probably going to do, because I've been asked, reviews of the Picard show. I want to do a Star Trek show. I've been talking about doing a Star Trek show. People want me to do a Star Trek show. I have this interview that I've been sitting on with Diane Duane, who's one of my favorite Star Trek novelists, and that'll probably be the inaugural episode of that show. But I'm not expecting Picard to be good, but I really want it to be good. And I think that what we're going to see, hopefully, with the Phantom Menace channels is that more people will be, there's more things for people to get excited about. And I think the Phantom Menace, those channels have been so negative about Star Wars for so long. I mean, for years now, because of Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. But now there's a lot of really interesting new things on the horizon to get excited about. So I'm thinking Dune, of course, being first and foremost. I mean, there are things coming out. Can't wait for Dune. I can't wait for the Eternals. I can't wait for, of course, No Time to Die. Very exciting stuff is coming out in 2020. We got a new season of Clone Wars that's going to drop. Excited to watch that. I think there's a lot. The Mandalorian season 2. I mean, God, who wants to wait until the fall? But there's so much great stuff and great content coming down the pike that I would expect that the Phantom Menace channels are going to be excited about it too. Absolutely. By the way, Griffin, thank you for subscribing to the channel in addition to your support of the channel. Very much appreciate that. Mind Morph subscribed to the channel. Thank you, Mind. John Hiroshi asks, anyone watching Doctor Who on New Year's? That's the new season of Doctor Who. There was no Doctor Who Christmas special, but I believe the new season, I don't know if it's the new season begins, or maybe it is only a New Year's special. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure everybody's going to watch it. You know, I hope that the new season of Doctor Who is great. I have no problem with a female Doctor Who. Again, it's always, for me, it has to do with great writing, great characterization. Is that what we're getting from our shows? That's all I ever want. Films at Home subscribed to this channel. As many of you know, I talked about Films at Home's channel yesterday. By the way, I don't know if you're out there, Films at Home, but I do watch your content a lot. I want to say I love what you do. I love your support of 4K. And I was talking to you and talking about you. I guess I wasn't talking to you. I was talking about you on the show yesterday. So for those of you who don't know, Films at Home is another YouTuber who does reviews and does reports on the state of the industry. He dropped an interesting video on Walmart and 4K that I highly recommend everybody go watch. So thanks for subscribing to the channel, sir. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that you've done. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for subscribing. I got a few letters, as everybody knows, and I'm going to read them. First and foremost, let's just jump. Let's just get right. Let's go right for the jugular. Willow Yang is here, ladies and gentlemen, as she is always. She's always in my heart, Willow Yang. And before I read her letter, I'm going to take a sip of water. And Willow Yang has written a letter about Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. And I know you just want to hear it. You can't wait to hear it. Greetings, Rob. I'm sending you my defense of Man of Steel. I quite enjoyed the movie, and I consider it to be one of the best films that Zack Snyder has made. You and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. Now, I don't think I loved Man of Steel as much as you might have. It's certainly not a perfect film, and I do have some issues with the script and the way some of the scenes were executed. I found some of the dialogue to be a little awkward. In particular, the conversation between Lois and the military officers at the Arctic base was quite cringy. What if I want to tinkle? I did not like the relationship between Lois and Clark. Amy Adams is a phenomenal actress, but I do feel she might have been miscast for the role of Lois Lane. She just didn't have that much chemistry with Cavill's Superman. And while I understood what they were going for with the tornado scene, the way it was executed just didn't really work for me. It looked a bit silly and lacked the emotional impact that it needed. What do I like about Man of Steel? I'll start with the aesthetics. And no, I'm not going to just gush on Henry Cavill's sculpted physique. That topic would probably take an entire dissertation in itself. Yeah, I'm sure. I imagine that Henry Cavill makes most women moist. Regardless of how you feel about Snyder, I think most of us can agree that he's a very stylistic director. He certainly knows how to make spectacular action scenes. While I do think that the color palette of Man of Steel could have been brighter, it was still a stunning movie nevertheless. The flight sequences were just breathtaking, the fight scenes heart-pounding. I really appreciated all of the thought and details that went into the design of Krypton and its culture, the different crests that each of the noble houses possessed. I liked the update to Superman's costume, which looked more futuristic, and of course, didn't have the red underwear on the outside. And while I generally don't pay much attention to movie scores, I loved Hans Zimmer's new Superman theme. I know that the term epic gets tossed around too much, but that's just the word I'd use to describe that piece. It was majestic, it was powerful, it was perfect for a more modern version of Superman. When it comes to the antagonist, I really appreciated Michael Shannon's iteration of Zod. I thought the character was given more complexity and nuance than he had been in previous films. His attempt to overthrow the Kryptonian Council that led to his imprisonment in the Phantom Zone wasn't simply motivated by lust for power. The government had failed its people, and Zod had good justification to turn against them. Likewise, he did not attack Earth for the sake of personal conquest. He wanted to revive his own people. Of course, he's a eugenicist whose plans entailed the genocide of humans, which is why he had to be stopped, something I will discuss shortly onwards. But I found his motivations to be much more compelling than just wanting to enslave the Earth and have everyone come kneel before Zod. Many people did not like the depiction of Superman in this movie, finding his character to be too angsty and unheroic. I can understand those complaints. I will just state the reasons why I actually like this portrayal. Man of Steel, for me, really attempted to give us as realistic a look as Superman as it possibly could, which is why I love the movie so much. Superman is just a character that has never made much sense to me. This became especially apparent when there's something like The Boys, which basically depicts what it would be like if superpowered beings really existed in our world. Even if Superman was raised by good, loving parents, are you telling me that he's never lost his temper, never gotten excited, never sneezed? Because any of that would lead to catastrophic consequences. I really liked how Man of Steel was able to delve somewhat into the physical and emotional toll that possessing such devastating powers would have on a kid. Just how painful the sound of a ticking clock was when you have super hearing. I know that there has been a lot of criticism over how the Kents raised Superman, telling him that he must conceal his powers instead of encouraging him to be a hero, but I happen to sympathize with them. Just put yourself in their shoes. If you had a child with godlike powers the likes of which had never been seen before, would you just tell them to go ahead and be a hero? Or are you going to be more cautious, knowing that one mistake could end up condemning your child to a life of being pursued by people who'd either want to destroy them, experiment on them, or utilize them as a weapon for their own gains? Exactly. Spot on, Willow. Right now, we still can't seem to even figure out how to deal with other people who might have different ideologies from us. How are we going to deal with some alien creature whose powers vastly surpass any weapon of mass destruction that we ever created? The instinct of the Kents was to protect their child, as any good parent should, to allow him to be able to grow up and find his own way and make his own choices when he is ready. This is what the scene of Pa Kent's sacrifice tried to convey, that he would readily give his own life to protect his son. And yes, I do think that its execution was awkward. I did too, because I think Superman could have saved him. But I understood and appreciated the thought behind it. While I can understand the distaste of fans toward this mopey version of Superman, the one thing I just cannot understand is the outrage over the destruction of Metropolis and the death of Zod. Me neither. What happened in Metropolis was not Superman's fault. It was Zod's and the other Kryptonians. Superman, almost by himself, had to fight through a world engine, several Kryptonians, and at the end, a raging homicidal Zod. I thought that the final climactic clash between Zod and Superman was probably one of the most realistic depictions of what a battle between two beings with godlike powers would be like. And it is certainly not going to be fun for those of us on the ground below. Zod was a consummate warrior, genetically engineered to protect his people at all costs. Superman wasn't a warrior. He's lived on a farm for most of his life, and had only just discovered his true heritage. He was completely outclassed by his opponent. The only reason that he was able to stop him was because he'd been living on Earth longer and had a better grasp of his powers. And when he was finally able to get a hold of Zod, he still implored him to stop, only for the latter to reiterate that he was going to keep on killing humans unless Superman destroys him. So people get angry with Superman for not stopping Zod, and then they get angry when Superman makes the only choice that's available to him under such impossible circumstances, by killing Zod instead of letting him go on to murder more humans. I just can't understand the logic here. And for anyone who doubts whether Superman cares about humanity, not only did Superman readily surrender himself to Zod when the latter threatened Earth, but he also, without hesitation, destroyed the only chance he had of reviving Krypton. He was not only willing to give his own life, but also the future of his own planet to ensure the survival of the human race. If that is not a heroic act of sacrifice, I really don't know what is. Bravo, Willow. And that's exactly what I've been saying about this movie, and I don't understand why people don't understand that. I will just conclude this very lengthy letter with some final thoughts. I did not love everything about Man of Steel, and I certainly don't consider it to be a perfect film. For me, however, it really worked as a more realistic depiction of what having someone like Superman would be like in our world. I really appreciate the dive into the character's psyche and his struggles with being different, with being a literal alien on our planet. I do feel bummed that so many fans have rejected this movie, and that the lackluster reception of Batman v Superman and Justice League probably means we won't be seeing Henry Cavill back in the Cape again. I guess the world is just not ready to embrace this version of Superman. Best regards, Willow. Well, Willow, what a great letter. When do you not write great letters? But that was a great letter. And yes, I completely agree with you 100%. I do. Let's see. Aaron Policelli has subscribed to the channel, as we've been on. Gregory Smith, our moderator, Gregory Smith, sent me a super chat. Saw Rise of Skywalker again in IMAX. Still a fan, warts and all. Yeah, you know, I got to go see it again. I saw it in IMAX. I thought it was a lot of fun. Pulp sci-fi at its finest. It did a lot of interesting things. I didn't think it all worked, but look, the things I liked about it, I liked the last half. I liked the Kylo-Rey relationship. It was the first time I liked Rey as a character, and I thought it was pretty good. I didn't hate it. Alexander Wilson sent it a super chat. Terry Gilliam says, I hated Black Panther. It gives young black kids the idea that this is something to believe in. BS. It's utter BS. Whoa, that ignorant. You know, I don't understand that. I don't think young black kids believe that Black Panther or Wakanda are real. But I think it's important that you show people of color of all different kinds being heroes. You know, I as a little kid, I could admire Superman. I was never going to be Kryptonian. I was never going to have his superpowers, but I could look up to Superman as somebody to admire and to emulate, even though they were a fictional character. And I think that T'Challa and his conduct and the way he leads Wakanda in the movies has something to teach. I just think that's pretty weird. What are you going to do? I don't know. But yeah, that seems weird to me. I don't know why he said that. Chetwin subscribed. It's interesting. Now that I can see how people subscribe as I go on. It's kind of interesting. Now, this is a really interesting letter. This letter is a counterpoint to Willow's letter. This comes from Jan Schleicher? Jan Schleicher? Or it could be Jan. But I'm sorry if... I guess it's Jan. I'm sorry if I massacred your last name. I really apologize. But this is a great letter. Hey, Rob. This is Jan from Cologne, author of a book called Roddenberry's Idea, and, as you may recall, an admirer of your eloquent and well-founded criticism, good taste, and media insights. Well, thank you, Jan. I wanted to make a brief general comment about Willow Yang's letter regarding the original Star Trek pilot, The Cage, in your live chat number 298, at about 1 hour and 15 minutes in. People should realize, if only to exculpate Gene Roddenberry, that it was a non-broadcast pilot that would not have aired this way. The introductions of characters and technology are very on the nose and filmed with 60s era male network executives in mind who didn't normally think about the future or science fiction. A lot of the pedestrian explicitness would have been cut out or reshot for broadcast or for theatrical showings, just like most pilots at the time. In fact, if I recall correctly, Desilu didn't bother to make a color print of the presentation. Only the color footage featured in the Menagerie two-parter has Roddenberry's reluctant stamp of approval on it in that context, apart from the black and white version with his commentary. As with the second pilot later on, he improved the material as much as he could, being limited by a locked-in music track, fixed running times, and a lack of time and money for much additional dubbing and editing, let alone reshoots. The Cage only had one goal: to get an expansive and ambitious series concept sold and financed at that moment in time. That doesn't mean Roddenberry wasn't proud of it, but people should not criticize it the way they would an actual finished episode of the series or even a broadcast pilot, nor judge any old Star Trek according to the same superficial criteria and with the same sensibilities that made them like the bad robot productions. In order to come to a close, I will just mention that the final product, The Menagerie, a compromise in terms of reshaping the Pike footage for release, won the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. Say hi to Gilbert and keep up the good word, Rob. Yours respectfully, this is what it says. It says, yours respectfully, Jan Schleicher? And in parentheses he says, feel free to mispronounce. Well, you know what, Jan? This is a great letter, and I really enjoy that you point this out. You know, that's why I've always told people that watching the Menagerie parts 1 and 2 is a far better way to expose yourself to the Cage than any other. I don't like it when people watch the Cage. I don't, because it isn't the way that Roddenberry wanted people to see that episode. It's cool that it came out. I mean, it's, now that we have it, it's good. It's fun to watch. This one comes from Stubble McShave. I don't know if I already read this. I think I did read this, didn't I? Yeah, I think I did read the Stubble McShave letter. I did. Stubble, didn't I read your Rise of Skywalker review? I'm pretty sure that I did. So maybe I didn't. I don't know. I think I did, though. This is Sonny Dominguez. Hi, Rob. I've written before and go by Captain Confidence when I send in questions to the John Campea Show. I'm glad to have been able to finally meet you in person at the 100 million views party. I'm the guy that gave you the Han Cholo shirt. Okay, I got this Han Cholo shirt. It's awesome. I haven't worn it yet. I know it's been a hot topic, but I wanted to chat about projects made by committee rather than a singular vision. I was one of the people who didn't like how Avengers Endgame wrapped up, nor Game of Thrones, and finally Episode 9. I know film is subjective, and I'm not trying to yuck on anyone's yum. But my frustration lies when I feel the quality has been compromised by the attention, compromised, and the attention to details have been skipped. Imagine you have a meal that delivered everything promised and you keep returning because the quality and execution is consistent. Yet, the more times you visit, you start noticing that some items lack the flavor or quality that first got you to be a fan. Should we not hold content creators to the same standards of quality we would hold a chef, a culinary artist, to? We talk about actors who phone it in, but what about directors or film companies who just send out movies that weren't their best? I don't mean to sound like a snob at times when friends who ask me about a movie and I explain why it didn't work for me. They see me point, shrug their shoulders, and tell me that they see me point, shrug their shoulders, and tell me that to enjoy it while they enjoy their McDonald's, claiming it's the best burger they ever had. Oh my God, am I a snob? Where is the balance from being a film fan and also a creator who views someone's art, and you cannot help but see ways that they could have executed it better to have really shined. This is a great letter. Thank you, Sonny D. A good question. You know, the problem is, I think, that when you're working on a film that costs $200 million, you might be the greatest director in the world, but unless it's your $200 million, you have other people you have to answer for. And one of the things, and this goes on all the time, everybody thinks they can make a movie. Everybody. I mean, you show movies to people and they will tell you everything that's wrong with it, even though they themselves have never made movies before. And I understand why. We all watch movies. We all know what we like and what we don't like. So everybody has an opinion on a film. Now, I know from working on movies, every filmmaker is trying to make the movie the best it can be. And I do think that filmmakers, people, are limited by their experience, their knowledge, and what they do and they don't like. And like J.J. Abrams, I don't necessarily think that J.J. Abrams, I have yet to watch anything that J.J. Abrams has made that I have felt was satisfying on the big screen. I think Mission Impossible 3 came close, but as a filmmaker, he's constantly let me down because he's never said anything that's original to me. Everything that I've ever seen him make is a riff on somebody else's work that uses other work to do the riffing. I haven't seen, I always go back to the scene in Star Trek 09 when Kirk rolls up on a motorcycle and sees the Enterprise on the ground. This is not an original image to me. To me, he took a bunch of other imagery like the Rebel Without a Cause. I mean, all the way back to a 50s biker gang movie, The Wild One with Brando or something. And looking out and up at his future, which is the Enterprise being constructed. This was not an original. In fact, he made the Enterprise less special by seeing it built on the Earth, when we've already had the Enterprise being refitted in space in Star Trek The Motion Picture with such beauty and grandeur. I mean, I understand what he was going for, but what he was going for was something that other people had done. He didn't bring anything new, I think, he just changed it around. But I think that, look, when you're a filmmaker, it's really hard. You get so far in it and you are locked into what you have to work with. I think everybody tries. Every filmmaker is trying to always do their best work. But like anything, movies also are part alchemy. There is a magic that happens when movies are made. You've got literally hundreds of people putting in work, their best work, hopefully, to try and make a movie fantastic, to make it amazing. Sometimes it doesn't always work. But I think everybody does try. But it's interesting to me, I'm sure that between Star Wars, what's interesting too, if you think about it, the people that are overseeing Star Wars, Bob Iger, Kathleen Kennedy, Alan Horn, J.J. Abrams, they all think they know what Star Wars is. And everybody's opinions are, of course, different. And I think it's tough. It's really hard. And when you got $200 million at stake, you have to listen to people that maybe aren't Star Wars fans. You have to listen to what they have to say, and you have to implement the changes they might want to make. So with a movie like, say, Rise of Skywalker, it's really difficult because unlike Star Wars, it was the authorship of one man, George Lucas, wrote and directed. He had his collaborators he worked with, but the final movie was all filtered through him. Nobody was telling him what he had to make. And that's no longer true of these large franchise properties. They have to, because they're too expensive, they have to take away the authorship. So there's too many, I think, voices. And then sometimes I think creators just, in the case of Weiss and Benioff, I think they just got to the end of Game of Thrones and they just didn't have anything more in them. And it's hard. It's hard. But I do think that projects made by a committee are never as good as projects that we get that have a singular vision to them. So I think you're absolutely right about that. But in a world where things are so expensive, it's really, really difficult. It's difficult to be on your own, I think. Timbula the Spider Monkey says, I think The Rise of Skywalker is my favorite Star Wars episodic movie since Return of the Jedi, but that isn't saying much. I liked it, but I didn't love it. It needed more Pride. I love Pride. You know me, I love my Richard E. Grant. I really enjoyed Pride. I really, really did. So much. Timbula the Spider Monkey also says, also, just to let you know, regardless of the result today, I still love you, Rob. Sorry, but go 49ers. You're in Australia. How can you as an Aussie love the 49ers? I mean, come on. Seriously, dude. Seriously. I'm not kidding. I don't get it. But okay. If you want to love the 49ers, if you want to root for the 49ers, who am I to tell you that you shouldn't? But you shouldn't. Anyway. This letter is from long-time Imagination Connoisseur Ian Samuels. Ian, how you doing? Rob, it turns out that the problems with the Disney Star Wars movies is Bob Iger, not Kathleen Kennedy. Bob Iger loves Rian Johnson and The Last Jedi. He hates JJ because he hates George Lucas, and JJ worked with Lucas for the Rise of Skywalker script. The original script had mention of Palpatine, but he was not supposed to appear in the movie and was not the main protagonist. It turns out that rumors of ex-Doctor Who Matt Smith being involved were true. He was in fact supposed to play the son of Mortis, a character from the Clone Wars animated series, and he was going to be the main protagonist, but when JJ admitted that his film would not please everyone, Bob Iger insisted that changes would have to be made and that Disney would not accept another disaster like the one that followed Last Jedi. According to an unofficial source who claims to work for Lucasfilm and refers to themselves as Lucasfilm Insider, in January it is expected that there will be an announcement officially that Rian Johnson will have left or been fired. It is also expected that Kevin Feige will be making the next trilogy, which will most likely be set during the Old Republic. As for further trilogies with Rey Skywalker, Poe Dameron, and Finn, well, apparently, if that happens, at least the first film, perhaps the whole trilogy, will be a Jon Favreau project. So from 2020, there will be no more Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, or Rian Johnson involvement with Star Wars. I think the future for Star Wars is still bright. That's interesting. You know, I read about the son of Mortis. I maybe that could have been, I don't know, but it seemed reasonable. I think Matt Smith would have been a great son of Mortis, to be honest. It's too bad. But I get it. Although I just don't know about all that, because it's not like they pull these triggers and don't know what's happening. A lot of people criticize Kathleen Kennedy letting Solo get as far along as it was before they pulled the plug. But I don't know if it's correct necessarily to blame her for that. I mean, they probably were seeing how the movie went, and it was Lawrence Kasdan who probably brought it up and probably started that ball rolling, although I don't know for a fact. But remember, these movies, whether there's creative battles behind the scenes, Rise of Skywalker is doing very, very well. I mean, you've got the 3 Skywalker movies, and now you've got Rogue One. So 4 out of 5 of these films made under Disney's ownership with Kathleen Kennedy at the helm will make over $1 billion. That is an incredible track record. So whether or not Kathleen Kennedy leaves Lucasfilm or not, and we can see, I think that fans sometimes think that The Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi both did very, very well. They're part of the $1 billion, well, Rise of Skywalker is going to be part of the $1 billion club. So this idea that she's out, we'll see. I mean, fans are now looking at this all like, ooh, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are the saviors of Star Wars because they like The Mandalorian. But remember, Kathleen Kennedy was just as involved with The Mandalorian as she was with any of the other Star Wars movies. She put Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau together. So she was the one that knew what she was doing. So we'll see. Will Kathleen Kennedy leave Lucasfilm? I don't know. I think that fans need to also remember to look at things from a business perspective and the amount of money that these movies are making. Rise of Skywalker is looking to supplant, to out-earn Last Jedi. And that could be an amazing thing if that happens. We'll see. We'll see what goes on. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen, but it's interesting. We shall soon see. Yeah. So Mark C is here. Mark Chure is here. Mark Chure sent me a letter. Dear Rob, I ran across something the other day that I found both odd and fascinating all at once. Now, I wonder if Hot Toys fans would think it fun to basically custom build a bootleg Hot Toy. Apparently, this is now possible. Feisen dolls are 6-scale bodies made with a steel posable skeleton inside a seamless silicone body. The bodies run about $90, but all you get is a body. Say you wanted a bootleg ScarJo Black Widow figure. You'd buy the female body. Then for another $45, you buy the female red hair, charming beauty head that just so happens to resemble Scarlett Johansson. Then for another $50, you'd buy the sexy female spy outfit for your Feisen 1/6 scale figure. Then for another $30, you buy the 1/6 scale weapons accessory pack. Then ta-da, you have a la carte Build-A-Bear style bootleg Black Widow Hot Toy. So Rob, as a Hot Toys fan yourself, what do you think of these? If you've heard of these, have you ever thought about investing in this? Well, yeah, they're having these kinds of bodies has been something that's gone on for a long time. And they've made all kinds, both male and female bodies. When they make the bodies, they will mold a head sculpt that will look like a certain celebrity. I bought a Daniel Craig figure a long time ago. I don't know, about 5 or 6 years ago, because they they lost the Bond license, so they were not going to make a Daniel Craig figure. So I bought a Daniel Craig body, a body that had Daniel Craig's head. This happens a lot. I still don't think the thing about Hot Toys is it's not just the sculpts. It's not just the sculpts that are so great. It's also the costumes and the accessories. They really are the Ferrari or the Lamborghini of action figures. And by the way, Feisen also puts out their own figures too. They do female figures, and I'm not sure if they actually made that Caroline Monroe figure, but they might have, which I should take out of the box and display. But yes, I've done that before, but I'm not a big fan. I mean, I much prefer to get Hot Toys figures just because the work that they put into them. But it's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of people that do that, and I have bought individual bodies before. It's not something I have necessarily shied away from. So, yes. And I have another Ian Samuels letter here. I'm going to read it. Ian Samuels sending in more letters, if it ever comes up. It's not coming up. It's coming through now, Con. I don't know why. Why not? Here we go. This is again from Ian Samuels. Rob, JJ's Episode 9, The Rise of Fandom. The biggest problem with both Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker is JJ not working in aid of the characters, but working in aid of fandom. I don't disagree with that. It is almost like he had a list of things that he wanted because he believed the fans wanted it. In doing so, he didn't do the characters any favors and ended up missing a lot of things that fans wanted. I can understand he was walking a tightrope. He was having to give Disney what they wanted, new stuff they could stamp Disney's trademark on, and at the same time, he tried to give within that structure what the fans wanted. In Rise of Skywalker, he hit a lot of the fan marks. Leia's ship from the first film, or a ship of the same make. Red 5, Luke raising the X-Wing from the water just like Yoda out of the swamp in Empire, Lando Calrissian, a second Death Star, Akbar's son. Although the Goonies style of finding the location of the Wayfinder on the wreck of the second Death Star was weird. But still so desperate to make Disney and fans happy, JJ missed many points that would have worked better for the characters. I'll give one example of something I would have done better for a character. When we meet the character of Janna on a different moon of Endor, where the wreck of the second Death Star was, she announces to Finn that her and all of her people are ex-stormtroopers who decided to rebel. The way JJ presented it was like, why did you rebel? She basically shrugs, dunno, felt right at the time. This is such a missed opportunity for character building. What I feel she should have said to Finn was, because we heard about you. You were a stormtrooper taken as a child, just as we all were, and you rebelled and joined the resistance. You became a hero for us and gave us the hope to rebel ourselves. That's a great point, sir. I'm surprised that they didn't do that. Well, that's my view and an example of one of the changes I would make. Ian Samuels. Ian, that is a great idea, and I don't know where or why they didn't do that. Yeah, why didn't they do that? That's kind of strange. I don't know. Richard Lyons sent in a super chat. Richard Lyons says, asks, will The Mandalorian go on long enough where Baby Yoda can speak? That is a good question. I think we know so little about Baby Yoda. I would imagine he would have to speak at some point. And will he speak in Frank Oz's voice? I don't know. I mean, clearly Disney knows that there has not been a breakout Star Wars character. Baby Yoda eclipsed all of the characters in this new sequel trilogy. I mean, I think you can't deny that Baby Yoda has become the most, well, dare I say it, influential Star Wars character in the last, well, maybe since I don't know when. But Baby Yoda certainly is, everyone certainly loves, I mean, it's unbelievable. Everyone loves Baby Yoda. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting question. Will Baby Yoda speak? I don't know. It's great. Here's another letter from Jishan Cater. Greetings and salutations, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. This will be my last and final letter about The Expanse for now. I'll probably write to you when Season 5 comes out. I really appreciate the subtle recommendation from you. I really enjoyed this show so much that I might actually purchase and read the books. The books are a little different than the series as well. I binge-watched the series this past weekend like a pig. I love the drama between the Earthers, the Belters, and the Martians. I love how they depict the society of these future worlds. When it comes to the proto-molecule, it reminds us that there may be some vast and powerful being out there that we may just not understand, which I find the beauty in this. I love all the characters. I would not in a million years say this, but honestly, Amos is my favorite character on the show. He's really friendly at times, but also very, very scary. That moment Miller had with Julie was just mesmerizing. It was beautifully tragic. This show is truly amazing, and I cannot wait for Season 5. Thank you so much for the recommendation again, sir. I think my next letter will be about Star Trek the Motion Picture. I always hear you talk about it on your show, so once I finish that and maybe part 2 of Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, we can chat more. Until then, have a better day. Jishan Cater. Well, Jishan, if you watch Star Trek The Motion Picture, I beg you to watch the director's edition if you can. I'd very much appreciate if you did so. I do think that the director's edition is, in fact, a better, probably it's the best version of the movie that exists. I really do believe that. I do think that. I really do. This letter is, I can't read that one. This one comes from Cal Kamel. Cal is, of course, Swack Props. And everyone knows how much I like Swack Props. I have a Swack Prop right there. Hi, Rob. If there's one movie that I'm dying for a sequel to, it's got to be Thomas Alfrederson's Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. His 2011 adaptation of Jean Le Carré's classic novel is an immersive 2-hour tale of espionage set in London circa 1973 during the Cold War. Le Carré's story is less a whodunit than an examination of the paranoia, distrust, and corruption that has eaten away at England's most secret spy organization during this period. It is a fascinating tale of defections and backstabbing, highlighted by the fact that London's own SIS may pose as big of a threat to the public welfare as the KGB. I've seen the previous BBC adaptation starring Alec Guinness, as well as its sequel, Smiley's People, also starring Guinness, and while I love both of them, I rate the 2011 adaptation higher in my list of rewatchable films. There's a lot going on under the surface of the movie, But Alfredson, I think it's Alfredson draws a facade that is both implacable and somewhat opaque. Voices are rarely raised and guns are almost never fired. The movie keeps you guessing to the end as if you're George Smiley himself, looking through the clues and intrigue. And talk about verisimilitude, this movie has plenty of it. So much so that 2 veteran CIA spies recently cited it as the most realistic spy movie they've ever seen. The cast is the creme de la creme of British cinema. Gary Oldman as veteran spook Smiley squares up to John Hurt, Mark Strong, Colin Firth, Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Hardy, Kathy Burke, and Toby Jones. But this superb array of stars doesn't detract at all from the film itself. Smiley, to me, is one of Oldman's best cinematic roles. He's certainly no James Bond, and there's no femme fatale in sight, but he is the quintessential British gentleman and remains calm and collected throughout the movie, despite the unraveling of events around him. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy was released to critical acclaim, won many awards, and topped the British box office chart for 3 consecutive weeks. Yet despite that success and the abundance of source material featuring the character of George Smiley, no sequel has been officially announced, which I find sad. I would rather see more tales of espionage featuring Oldman Smiley than the numerous unwanted sequels or reboots to stale franchises we get year after year that are nothing more than cash grabs. What are your thoughts on the 2011 adaptation of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy? I'd love to hear them, Rob. Sincerely yours, Cal, a.k.a. Swag Props. Well, Cal, I love it. I own the Blu-ray. Again, I thought that movie, it was incredibly sophisticated, truly a thinking man's film. I loved every minute of it. And like you said, it is so adult. It is so full of verisimilitude. It takes itself so very seriously. And I, too, love Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People. I have Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, I think still on DVD, but loved it. And I thought it was a terrific adaptation. Gary Oldman was terrific. And I don't know why. It just didn't do that well. I think ultimately audiences were left a little cold by the movie. And I don't know why. I think it certainly wasn't what people had come to expect. It was not a slam bang. It was really a thinking man's or thinking woman's, thinking person's film. And I was sorry to not that it didn't get a sequel. I thought for sure they would make one. But I love the film. I'm glad you love the film. I can't recommend that film highly enough, actually. It's such a good movie. Such a good movie. This next letter comes from William La Rochelle. There was discussion of how much exposure Disney Star Wars writers have to the established lore of the EU Legends books. He wrote it that way, so I decided to cough. Comics and games. It may have been the Rolling Stone interview where it was established that Chris Terrio had extensive exposure to that material, praising Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire trilogy and throwing a bone to the controversial Chuck Wendig of the Disney era. Back when Solo was being promoted, Lawrence Kasdan mentioned that his sons know more about Star Wars lore than he does, and that the Solo movie itself makes reference to elements from L. Neil Smith's Lando trilogy of books, like Lando Calrissian and the Flame Wind of Ocean. So they aren't without exposure to those resources. And if John Kasdan read Anne Crispin's Han Solo and the Paradise Snare, then they know Solo is an actual name held by a family of crooks he was able to meet for good or ill. So the official screenwriters know better. On the other end of the spectrum are those of us going ahead with writing adaptations of properties we do not own. Skilled impressionist Jamie Costa has made an excellent short called Han Solo, A Smuggler's Trade, and this Christmas uploaded Kenobi. Just before Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012, I bought a couple of sizes of Millennium Falcon to shoot a feature I had adapted from Han Solo at Star's End by Brian Daley. Man, I would like to have seen that. I still have it storyboarded, and I am itching to do some of the shots using action figures and my wall of green screen, but it could mean more grief. No, do it. Do it now. In the late 90s, I did a 108-page screenplay adaptation of Dune and actually spoke to someone at Alliance Atlantis about it who said, "You don't choose anything easy, do you?" That, as well as my adaptation of Piers Anthony's On a Pale Horse, that would be part of his Incarnations of Immortality series. Man, everybody had to read On a Pale Horse when they were kids. Didn't you read On a Pale Horse? You all did out there, didn't you? I actually had exchanged letters with Mr. Anthony by mail, as well as an agent who advised me that the rights were available and for how much. Following through, the interaction was through his High Peers website where messages are forwarded. The word was that Disney had the rights to the whole Incarnations of Immortality series of books, following the offices of death, time, war, fate, nature, evil, and good. There had been reports that Jamie Foxx had been considered to star as Zane in On a Pale Horse, and that a draft had been written by the scribe of Liar Liar. Haven't heard anything since. When I reflect on it, I had to go through the process one way or another and may have picked up something from it. The World According to Garp and The Virgin Suicides were screenplay adaptations that came out of compulsion and without any assignment nor any rights. But for someone who has no say whatsoever, merely as a fan and a driven creative person with a vision, I can laugh at the idea that disgruntled fans feel ownership of intellectual properties that have historically generated something they liked. If someone else makes On a Pale Horse, I will irrationally feel that their version is counterfeit. I have a slate of demands. Were I magically in charge of the project at Disney, the whole series would have to be greenlit so it can schedule scenes from all of the books that are looked at from different perspectives. They would also have to acquire the rights to specific songs by God for the title sequence. At the end of On a Pale Horse, as the white sedan overtakes us and passes us by on the highway, I would want the Reaper form of Zane tapping a bony finger on the steering wheel to Another One Bites the Dust. Fate's story, with a tangled skin, should open with her spider webbing animation and synchronicity by the police. Being a Green Mother should open with Ozzy singing Revelation, Mother Earth. For the Love of Evil, about a sorcerer's apprentice whose love is killed during the Inquisition and he takes on the office of evil, should begin after the teaser with Raise a Little Hell by Trooper. By the way, this is for all of you budding screenwriters out there, never write the name of a song that you want to be in a movie, or ever talk about how much you want a song until you're actually negotiating for it. Keep that under your hat, because you don't want anybody who owns the song to have that power over you. You always want to be able to walk away and be like, fine, I don't need your song. Granted, I am micromanaging something that seems further away with each candle on the birthday cake. I picture Barclay from Next Generation being given a temporary gift of intelligence in order to be a vessel and perform a task, only to have this fade away like a spent balloon to be left with my workaday mundane fictional idiocy. It also brings to mind Flowers for Algernon and its movie Charlie, especially after looking at an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie Day appears to be afflicted with intelligence after participating in an experiment in an episode written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, themselves having ridden a roller coaster from savior status to fan punching bags. I've been watching your Robservations or listening when I can find time, and I find that, as with Kevin Smith, we sometimes get too much of a good thing, and I wonder what benefit there is in long podcasts. I've had a copy of Free Enterprise for years, and so I accept your authority, while at the same time I can draw a line in the sand with Kevin Smith, where I looked forward to commentary tracks. I still prefer filmmaker commentary tracks over any podcast, and checking his website around 2001 and enjoying the evening with DVDs, and then feeling like the business takes over and there is so much paddling to wade through. An edge you have is that there's no applause break. Unless I'm in an audience, I never know what I'm expected to get from sustained applause. Maybe freeze a beatific smile on my face. The latest round of Star Wars reactions in the discourse as it exists online has at least caused me to take account of how I'm spending my time. Doomcock recently agreed with Gary Nerdrotic and that Michael Bay is a better director than J.J. Abrams. Whatever people might think of writing choices, that judgment rings demonstrably false, and if an application of direction as a language can objectively measure someone's use of a frame for a specific impact, as opposed to choices being arbitrary, then JJ, or JJ and Dan Mindell for all I know, is the more deliberate and effective director. Cinema Blend had a great recent interview with Tarantino where one of the hosts remarked about a shot and said Robbie Richardson is a genius, and I respect Quentin Tarantino for speaking up and setting him straight that the shots are conceived by him as a director and then achieved by Bob Richardson. I personally like to storyboard my own little projects and the aforementioned longer ones that have not been shot, because at least I can apply the psychology of the frame and direct on paper. Werner Herzog's best works of direction are in documentary, so it is not surprising that he thinks storyboarding is for cowards. But I think, as maddening as it is to live in the theatrical world, it is still a form of self-expression and a process that exercises reason and allows the choices of concealment and revelation. I just edited my Christmas home movies and uploaded them, finding structure and visual continuity in something that I had to take as it went, and that's an exercise I take for granted as part of visiting family and rolling while amusing things are said that make a nice counterpoint to Christmas decoration shots. Excuse the length of this message. Have a happy and productive 2020 vision. William La Rochelle, Toronto, Ontario. Well, William, what a thoughtful, interesting letter that is. There's a lot to unpack there. One of the things that I think about directing is, and I think a lot of the time that's kind of been lost in this day and age, is, yes, I think when you're directing a movie, you are the author of that movie and you are conceiving your shots in your head. They're part of the process. I mean, the cinematic language, first of all, you write your story on paper, but then you look at your scene that you've written that happens, say, between two people. And when you're conceiving shots, you want those shots. Those shots have to be doing something or saying something more than just the dialogue that's happening on screen. They have to do more. I mean, one of the really interesting things that you can do with, say you're shooting an argument between two people. You know, the space you can show, if you're blocking a scene and people are moving around a room or something and they're not just sitting at a table, you can use their proximity to accentuate what's being said, or literally show visually the gulf between them. So this idea that you allow cinematographers to just make up your shots for you, a lot of people don't understand that's not what you do. But Quentin Tarantino put it perfectly. He conceives of the shots, and then Robbie Richardson has to execute them. I mean, I don't know nearly as much about lighting as I should. I mean, I know about composition. I know what I like in a shot, but I don't know much about lighting. I mean, I know the basics, but I could certainly, if I was going to hire somebody like Roger Deakins, who, if you look at his work in Skyfall, or you look at his work in Blade Runner 2049, or even go back and look at his work in something like Shawshank Redemption, I mean, his work is just unbelievable. I don't know the first thing about getting that look. And that's how you work well with a cinematographer. You allow them to do what they do. You tell a cinematographer what you want, your conception of the shot, and you're hoping, as with everybody on a movie, you're hoping that the cinematographer not only executes what you want, but brings even more to it and brings an element that you hadn't even considered, because that's what a good cinematographer does. As a matter of fact, that's what any good person, whether it's hair and makeup people, visual effects people, they're all bringing something to the party that goes above and beyond what you wanted to do. And I think that's one of the great things about working in a collaborative medium like film. You know, I really I really feel that way. And that's one of my favorite things about working on movies, is in fact working with other talented creative people who just plus everything that you're doing. But yeah, but I like that letter. Thank you very much for writing it in. Dieter Bastian, all the way from Deutschland, is here. Dieter here. A while back, Martin Scorsese said those Marvel-type movies were just theme park rides, and I, of course, was not happy with that statement. That's why Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker felt like such a disappointment to me. It couldn't have given Marty's comment any more validation, and that was even more frustrating than the Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker gobbledygook itself. A short take on the Disney Star Wars trilogy as a whole. Well, they brought the band back together with some new musicians for The Force Awakens and re-recorded their classics again with some new tunes and sold millions of copies of their greatest hits album, Number 1. After the success, it was time for writing completely new songs, which could land on a brand new record called The Last Jedi. It sold very good as well, but a lot of fans weren't into the new material and were almost turned away from the brand as even more original band members were dying off. So from there, sprung the idea to do another greatest hits album, Number 2, The Rise of Skywalker. It would bring all the fans back together again. Even other ex-original band members came on board for the recording sessions, but unfortunately, there were only B-side singles left over to cover for a second compilation. Nevertheless, they did it anyway, and the studio is in luck because true fans will even buy the lame albums. Perhaps all of this could have worked out better if they hadn't forgotten the most important ingredient for a good record: more cowbell. Rob, you can play the tambourine instead. Best regards from Germany, Dieter. Well, Dieter, I love when you write from Deutschland. It's great fun. And you know what? What an interesting comparing the Rise of Skywalker to a cover band. I think that's pretty interesting. I like that. I like the way you think. I like the way you think. Yeah, fascinating. Let's see. What do I got here? I got another letter. Another letter from... Oh, I already read this letter. It was about Stephen Goggins, about watching Stanley Kubrick movies. This letter comes from David Wells. And he wrote this on December 28th. R.E. the Resican Flute. Dear Rob, I hope I can call you Rob. You seem comfortable and familiar to me, like an old briefcase or a well-shaped wallet that becomes... Oh, you know what? I read this yesterday, too. Yeah. Well, there you go. You know what? I'm going to read it anyway. Why not? David Wells says, I hope, let's see, you seem comfortable with and familiar to me, like an old briefcase or a well-shaped wallet that becomes one with your ass cheek, when you sit on it because it's so perfectly shaped by time. Why do I find you so familiar, my friend? Well, there are a few reasons. Thanks for asking, Imaginary Rob. As you know, I am the connoisseur of my imagination. I think I haven't read this. And you, for the purposes of this letter, are my guest of honor. We're about the same age. I just celebrated my 54th birthday. Hey, don't try and sneak a few years onto me. We both love comic books, although I lean much more heavily towards Kirby's Marvel, and I was Peter Parker. We both love movies. My dad ran movie theaters since I was 6. In fact, cleaning them was my first non-paying job. The coolest thing about that whole experience, though, has got to be learning to run the projectors, splice reels together, and obviously get the changeovers down to absolute perfection. We ran on shipping reels still and actually used the arc carbon rod lamp houses on our projectors. Back then, you needed a full-time projectionist to keep up with the changeovers and babysit the rods, for if they burnt too far apart, no more picture. By far, though, the thing that makes me feel most kindred with you is our mutual love and appreciation for Star Trek. At some point, I hope to actually chat with you over Star Trek and then perhaps movies some other time. I first became aware of you through John Schnepp's show, Heroes. I'll always regret never reaching out to Schnepp because I know we could have had some amazing conversations. I don't want to miss out on those opportunities with you, Rob. Okay, so a very quick segue into my reason for reaching out to you today. I had watched your video of one of the many that you had worked on for Star Trek The Experience in Las Vegas. Sadly, I never had the opportunity to attend. Anyway, my mind focused on the ending of that clip where Picard joins the crew for poker for the first time at the end of All Good Things. Something about that struck me as funny until I realized that the soundtrack, there was a rendition of Picard playing his Resican flute. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but I checked the original. That has got to be your doing, sir, and for that, I commend you, and once again, thanks for loving Star Trek as I do. In closing, I'll just reiterate my wish to discuss various topics of interest with you when or if you ever have the inclination to do so. Yet there's another topic of interest we share, and that is my unique appreciation and admiration for feminine wiles. David Wells. What a great letter, David. Thank you for that. No, I had not read that before. Well, I'm glad. Yes, when I was doing those Star Trek videos, and I'm going to make another video putting up the 3 that I have from the Star Trek experience, I tried very hard to create meaning for Star Trek fans wherever I could, and that was very much intentional with the Resican flute over that. So that was very much something I did. Danny Ortiz just subscribed to the channel. So Danny, thank you very, very much. I certainly appreciate that. Yeah. I have another letter here. Or do I? I think I might be out of letters. I think I might be out of chats. I think I might just be out of everything. I think that will then bring me to the end of this show. And I think you're right, because I'm going to go get situated, and I am going to watch. I don't know if you guys are going to watch, but are you going to watch the football game? Are you going to watch this game? I don't know. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the end of Robservations, the show about something. Robservations episode number 303. And once again, this show is brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's Grooming Products for those men who want to look good and feel great, which is fantastic. And you can go to their website at getluckytiger.com, and you can punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity, and you can get 20% off of your order. As always, I want to say thanks to my moderators. Of course, Detective Jim, Greg Smith, Louis Yu, Jordy Lyons, and of course, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa, who is the man behind the curtain, the man behind the man, as it were. I want to thank you all for watching. I will be back on the John Campea Show tomorrow, and I will be back with Robservations episode 304 later tomorrow in the afternoon. I want to thank everybody for tipping, for supporting the channel via super chats, going to the website, sending in letters. It's great to have you. The community that we're building, it's getting bigger all the time, as you can evidence now that I can read off subscriptions we're getting while the show is going on. Please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends, please share, do whatever you need to do, because those analytics are always a great thing to have. So, ladies and gentlemen, I now will tell you, what do I always say? Every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say it's been great to be here with you today on Sunday. Go watch the Seahawks beat the 49ers. And as always, have a better day. Please, have a better day. And that will bring me to the end of this episode of Robservations, if I can even find the button which will stop me from streaming, which one day I'm going to get this all technically down. I promise I will. Have a better day.